Welcome back to episode 220. And do you know why I know it's 320? You know why I know it's 320? And we've got such an exciting guest list of already pre-recorded episodes, but we are doing a take two on this episode. Ben Turner is back. He has driven up from the Gold Coast to be here today after we originally recorded it 2 weeks ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, probably a week and a half ago, I would say. It was on a Friday, I think.
Yeah, it was a Friday, and we had a delicious steak after that. But the cool thing about this is there was a few things. So guys, I decided to re-record. Ben actually did say after the original episode recording 10 days ago, mate, you seemed a bit off. How did I seem to you?
You just seemed fatigued, tired, cranky. I was like, I knew that we had this really juicy steak coming up later on, so I thought maybe he's just got his mind on that and not thinking about anything else. But yeah, you were sort of, I think probably scattered is a good word for it, is you were just a bit all over the shop. And for those 400 people that actually got to listen.
It was downloaded by about, I think, 417 or 412 people who caught it before lunchtime yesterday when I made the decision to pull it.
Am I your first pull?
Yes.
Am I?
And it was one to remember. But no, you were. And it was, I can honestly say it wasn't you, it was me.
Okay. I feel like I'm being broken up.
I listened to all the episodes before I air them. There has been one that I've nearly pulled and it wasn't me, it was them. So, but after the first two listens, I was like, you know what, that feels genuine and authentic. And I also love the fact that I just show up how I am. Yeah. So for me, while you mentioned it and I thought about it and I considered it, I was like, well, what you see is what you get. And I think that was almost like an identity I was holding myself to. But I think...
But for the people that didn't actually hear it, what were some of the things that sort of stood out for you that was just like...
Yeah, some things that, yesterday, so I went out to the running track and I was listening to it again on the drive out and while I was warming up. And then I finished it off when I finished and I was like, you know what, the beautiful thing about social media and obviously the fact that it was a podcast is I have control over whether it actually goes out or I can do a redo. And I think being able to learn from our mistakes, but also reassess what our standards and expectations are around ourselves made me message you and go, Benny, what did you actually think? And for me, there were two things that made me pull the episode. The first one was that I swore way too much. Look, I'm an avid swearer, and I think it just rolls off the tongue. But I was swearing to a point where it wasn't because it was impactful in that moment. I was swearing because I was too lazy to actually explain or give context around what we were talking about. So every time when I was listening to it, I was like, "Where's the context?" And I was just like, "Fuck it," or said some word, and I was like, "That's so lazy of me." Because I know as a listener, and one of the things that I want to help people understand is more about how we can use context to understand where people are coming from. I wasn't giving context. And it goes back to what that guy said to me at the pub, 6 or 7 years ago. Why don't you stop fucking swearing and tell me what you really mean or what you really think?
Yeah.
And so when I watched that back, I was like, there was definitely a huge amount of swear words that I used to cover up what I actually wanted to say. And that, I'm not trying to justify what I did. It was obviously, I didn't show up as my best self, and there were some indicators that I was obviously fatigued. I was stressed because we bought a house that week, and but I wanted to do the episode. So yeah. I sort of forced myself to do something when I wasn't in the best frame of mind. So a big learning from that is, our emotion and how we're feeling has a huge impact on how we show up on day-to-day life, which is why it's so important to be mindful of stress management, sleep, and various other things that we can control, right? And not just, if you're in a position where you don't have to do something for the sake of doing it, definitely don't do it. And that was a huge learning curve for me. I'm very grateful that it was you.
Already, there's a huge change in the way you're coming across. Like there's so much more energy. You feel refreshed. It's a good vibe I'm getting for you.
I feel amazing, but I think for those 412 or 17 people who did, when I pulled it, some people messaged me and said they loved the authenticity and the realness and that people could relate to it, and others were like, I really respect your decision to do that. It shows that you've got a lot of self-respect and you're a genuine person. So both ways received it well, but I think the reason why I chose to was because there were some things and this was the other thing that made me pull it, that I didn't ever get my context out.
No, and that could be perceived as something that was
Definitely,
not your typical Lockie.
and I don't want to also be seen in here as like, oh, he said something dumb, he's trying to retract his statement like Trump or someone. For anyone that knows me, like what we were talking about was, I was saying how there's certain people, when they just frustrate you, that you just want to punch them.
Yeah.
And having the point that I wanted to get across in that is that's what I feel, right? And I'm sure there's plenty of blokes out there listening to this who have those moments where you feel fucking angry to the point where sometimes you don't process it well enough that it turns into aggression, and maybe how you've handled it in the past is it's a defense mechanism because you feel uncomfortable as, oh, punch him, or violence is my way of dealing with it, which it was for me. And the context around that was that's how I felt, but I'm more self-aware now to obviously know I don't want to harm people. And I did say this in the last episode that I would never punch anyone now because I've got too much to lose. There's, as you brought up, there's the one punch can kill, but I'm also just chicken shit. I avoid confrontation, physical confrontation, more than anyone that I know now. So,
and also it's not the Michelle Obama way, taking the high road. You got to punching. That's a weak way.
Yeah, and I think why we were debating it, because so for those, once again, Ben and I had a debate because he disagreed, and I was in the zone where I was like, well, I wasn't articulating myself or getting my point across. Is the fact was that's how I feel, and that's how I felt, and because I, for whatever reason, wasn't explaining myself well, I was getting more frustrated in the fact that, look, I'd love to punch someone when that's the feeling.
Yeah, and as it was probably perceived in the way that I was taken across, I'm like, wow, Lockie's telling all his listeners to go out and punch people. And that's not the message we ever want to get across.
No, that's when I was listening to it again yesterday. I was like, Benny, I think you're actually right, because I've been listening to this rant for I don't even know how long. It was really painful to listen to, but I was like, at the end, I got a little bit of context, but I still didn't get the context in. So I was like, if people tune out before that, there's a wrong message going out. So,
all right, here's your little reset button right there. Just press that for us. Beep.
Welcome back to episode 320 with Lockie Stewart and Ben Turner, and we're going to be co-hosting today. If you haven't actually you probably know where Ben's voice comes from. For those who attended the Foundations workshop where Benny T was there, give him a round of applause for jumping on here and reach out to the...
That was a fun day. That was a really fun day. If you haven't done a workshop like that with Lockie, and there's one coming up...
What did you enjoy about it?
I think it was the rawness of being able to sit in a room with a bunch of dudes that you didn't know, that were complete strangers from all different walks of life, and we were able to be, I don't know what you did, but you were able to get us to be really open with each other and talk about feelings that we wouldn't necessarily talk about with each other, or with people that are close to us. It was almost like a little therapy session. But on top of that, it got us moving, sweating. We did a little workout at the start, a type of workout that I haven't done before, and then finished the day off with some meditation with Danielle and an ice bath, which was just it was a good bonding experience for all these blokes, where we could just chew the fat and have a really refreshing day of mindfulness. It was
So
good.
the listeners overseas who are wondering what on earth chew the fat means have a conversation.
Have a conversation. Yeah.
But I think the main thing that we try to get across in the workshop is helping men that doubt themselves, so don't think they can, essentially, if we tie it into the men can, that men that don't think they can, show them that they can.
Yeah.
And one of the things is obviously building a strong mind and building a strong body, and we obviously did that with the sweat, the exercise part. And then we did the strong mind through helping you guys, first and foremost, flex that conversation and that honesty muscle, because it is a muscle, right? Being honest, being authentic, being genuine is available to everyone. And the more you practice it, the easier it becomes. Or the more open to having those conversations you are. Same with jumping in an ice bath. It's a pretty uncomfortable situation. But when you get in there, you realize that you can control, you're more capable of what you first thought. And by doing that, the blokes walk away and go, well, one, as you said, there's a great bond because you've shared maybe an ice bath that some blokes haven't tried before. It's I just nailed something that I never thought I could do. So Benny was there, or Sean was there, or such and such was there.
Makes you feel like you can go off and do anything, really.
Yeah. And we were just talking offline about it before, but every book that I've read, whether it's around finances, marketing, self-help, whatever it is, they all have the same basic principles. And they have their own stories attached to it or way of articulating, which I think, you know, when you find some that resonate with you or you relate to, continue to read them. Like, yes, read other ones to understand different perspectives or different words. Like, there's definitely benefit in reading other books, but those ones that you really gravitate to, just keep reading them and make sure you're actually implementing it. That's the because I was saying to you, like, there's such simple principles.
Yeah.
It's like, we brush our teeth every day, not because you enjoy getting up and jamming something in your mouth and going, like, that's, I don't enjoy that.
You don't enjoy jamming something in and out of your mouth?
No. Thanks, man. I should set myself up for that. But we do it because we like to have fresh breath, we like to have a clean mouth, and we like not to have to go to the dentist and say, oh, ready for some fillings, buddy.
Yeah.
So we do it for the outcome. So think about a lot of the things that you're doing in your life. And I think one of the things that I want to get across quickly before we go back on topic, with a workshop, it's an immersive experience, right? Any workshop you do, doesn't matter what it is, even a training camp, right? It's an immersive experience where it is designed for you to be able to focus on what's in front of you, which is generally opening your eyes or educating you to something that could benefit your quality of life. What then happens when you leave that, you go back to your life, like your environment, where it becomes difficult to do that because it's not a habit.
Yeah.
It was just once, that was easy because I had a whole weekend clear to do that. So you need to be mindful, and this is why we've got the Strong Men of Value program, where it's more action focused and accountability focused. We still educate a whole heap and do all of that sort of stuff, but the main premise is, are you taking fucking action? I swore then because I wanted to, not because I wasn't next.
Felt good.
Yeah,
too.
felt good. But because there are simple things that us as individuals, and everyone's unique, so you build your own sort of list of things that you want to do that are going to help you become the man that you want to be and create the life that you want to create. Now, it's awesome when you first decide to do it, everyone's motivated, everyone's rip-roaring ready to rumble, but then life continues to get in the way and maybe we forget about doing it. It's like, I set up to eat well, or I set up to start a gym program, I set up to meditate, but now I'm not.
Yeah.
That's completely fine. We know that, we acknowledge that happens. But what we want to improve upon is, okay, well, how do we make this, one, why are you doing it?
Yeah. That's the most important thing, I think.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And what are you hoping to achieve? What are you hoping that act of meditation, journaling, exercise, calling a mate, doing a date night with your missus, what are you hoping that to give you? And I think at the end of the day, it might boil down to significance, love, connection, whatever. So if the task isn't providing that, that's why I'm, like I said, that program's there, is because day in, day out, we set intentions around what you're doing, but then at the end of the day, you reflect upon that. And for some people, it's like, I'm going to spend 5 minutes to do that. Well, fuck. You're spending 2 minutes or 3 minutes or 4 minutes or 5 minutes brushing your teeth for a reason. Spend 5 to 10 minutes doing this in the morning and 5 to 10 minutes doing this at night, so you understand yourself more and you're...
But it also gets easier. The more and more you keep doing it. So if the first month might just suck. Like, you're like, I don't want to be doing this. Like for me, running, right? I'm like, I don't want to get out. I don't want to have to run and do all those things. But the more you do it, the more you condition your body to go, okay, it's a natural thing to put on my shoes, put on my running gear, and get out.
And
there.
you were training for a marathon, weren't you?
Half marathon.
So I was excited to bring this up. So Benny was training for the half marathon, the Gold Coast half marathon. How did that come about, first and foremost? Because as you said, you're not a runner.
No, I'm not a runner by any means. Look, to be fair,
you can run, but you're not. You wouldn't call yourself an avid runner.
I can run. I've got legs and I can move my feet on the ground, but it's just more. I don't enjoy it. It doesn't feel comfortable for me. I'm not like the fittest dude as well. So it was. I was sitting down at having.
Define fit though.
Well, as in, I can't run a marathon.
Because one of the biggest things is, I think a lot of blokes neglect their health because it's an all or nothing mindset. You've got to either look jacked and ripped like the guy on Instagram, my photo from today, but or you just have a dad bod.
Yeah.
But for me, and what I want you gents to realize is, fitness is relative to what you want from your life. It might be being able to keep up with kids. It might be being able to run a half marathon.
Yeah.
But you need to decide what that is and make sure that you do whatever is required to maintain the level?
I think for me, it was just feeling more healthy within my own body. And that was the problem. That's why I actually came to you and spoke to you about this, was because, I knew that you were doing, at the time, the full marathon. But I guess I needed a goal set there for me, just to be like, hey, Lockie, just maybe if there's a marathon in like a year's time, or a triathlon or something like that, maybe you could say, hey, go do that and set me that goal, so then I can go and work towards that. Because I wasn't really working towards any fitness goals at the time. And then you just go to me, well, why don't you just do the half marathon in 11 weeks? I'm sorry, what? 11 weeks? And you're like, yeah, you can do it. 11 weeks, it'll be fine. And then you just walked away. And I was like, oh, shit.
There's no rebuttal.
No, and so I literally, as you walked away, I was on the street and I got out my phone and I signed up whilst just walking to my car. And I sent you a screenshot to be like, hey, guess what I just
We're
did?
in. And I put the program together, and here we
Did,
are.
and I started running, and it was horrible at first, but then actually it was the workshop that really changed things around for me, because we did that breathing exercise stuff, and the breathing really changed the way that I was able to run, because one of the main things for me was the lung capacity and breathing. And once I learned how to do that properly, I was a mouth breather, and now I'm a nose breather.
So am I. There's probably people hearing them like,
They're like, what are they talking about? Mouth breathe. So yeah, no, that's how it sort of came about, and and then it got cancelled. Oh no.
when I was listening to it, I was like, actually, we can talk about the fact that it got cancelled.
Yeah.
What was it like for you, right? That you set a goal that you were, and granted, you worked for 11 weeks, but you were doing 4 sessions a week. If you were following the program.
Yeah.
Well, you were doing 4 runs a week. So there's a fair amount, and they were long runs, like they were hour plus runs every time. So you sacrificed, or you invested a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
How was it when you saw that it got cancelled? Because people are working towards goals all the time, and sometimes you don't get the outcome you want. Sometimes they might get cancelled. Things happen. And did you handle that well? You're probably stoked, right?
No, it was if I'm going to be completely honest with you, it was bittersweet, because I didn't think I was quite ready for it, but at the same time I knew that once it came along, I was just going to do it and then get it done and feel either shit or good afterwards.
Yeah.
But I guess I felt good in a way that I probably had more time to work towards that goal, but bad in the way that I was just like, that sucks. I would have done it. Like it would have sucked, because I hate running, but at the same time I would have ticked that off my list.
Yeah.
And but that hasn't stopped me from getting out there now and still continue to run, because the run for me, the marathon for me, wasn't about doing a marathon. It was about getting fitter.
Yeah.
And so what I noticed in the course of the 11 weeks leading up to it was that I was starting to lose weight. I was starting to feel really good, and it was getting out there and sweating every day was something that I really wasn't doing. And so to be able to just continue that journey isn't for the half marathon, it's for myself. So that's why I will continue to do it, and then you'll probably maybe
follow Ben on Instagram.
Probably take me to a half marathon somewhere.
So you can see he's updated. Whenever he does a run, he's going to take a selfie. That's accountability right there.
Oh no.
Please do. Before and afters, please. But I think as well, the what I took away from that, from how you said it, was more so than we all have an end goal, things that we want to achieve, and they're awesome to tick off milestones, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a great way to get feedback around whether it's working well for you or it's not. But one of the areas where a lot of people fall short is I did a podcast on a 6-week challenge, right? And it might just be, I'll train for a marathon and then that's it. And they don't become that, like your reason for doing that was about health, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which I would imagine you want to feel healthier for a number of reasons. And why do you want to actually feel healthier?
Well, it feels good to feel healthy. Like
Why is it important for you to feel good?
Because I want a longer life. I want to be able to sort of experience what life has to throw at me. There've been times in my life where I've given up, and I don't like to have that feeling anymore. I want to be able to sort of move on with my life and experience it and get up every morning and just feel good. I wasn't being able to, feel healthy, I suppose. I knew within myself that I was doing lockdown in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And lockdown in Melbourne, as for those who don't know, we did 4 months of hard lockdown where we weren't allowed out of our houses for more than an hour a day. The shops weren't open. There was no real escape from being inside your home, and things took its toll. I put on like 15 kilos of fat.
Muscle?
Yeah, I wish. But it was just trying to get back to that healthy feeling of being able to get out and go for a walk and not feel out of breath. And I knew that by speaking to you, this big health nut, then I was probably going to get some accountability from you and to, I was going to do it no matter what, but it was just more having that person to push you off the ledge.
And it's definitely important to do that. When, for anyone listening, when you want to, you don't just want to be or become rich. You don't just want to become healthy. You want to be that, right? Like when you think about these things, I exercise and move my body every single day. Rain, hail, sunshine.
Shine.
But I do it as a non-negotiable. I don't tell everyone to do it, but the reason why I do it is because I am healthy.
Yeah.
I treat my body in a way that I know is going to allow me to feel my best. Granted, guys, I drink beers and I do take moments and do things that aren't unhealthy, but majority of the time, in the back of my head is like, okay, well, how would a healthy person conduct themselves? How would someone who has the health that I want to have, that's sustainable for long-term enjoyment of my life, how would they think, act, and behave? Same with money. I used to know nothing about money, and I earned a lot of money, and I blew a lot of money, and I lost a lot of money. But then I started asking the same thing: how would I need to act if I was wealthy?
Yeah.
How would I need to think, act, and behave? And then you start, as you said, you find people who have in those areas like health. I hang around healthy people.
Yeah.
If I was hanging around unhealthy people just by pure proximity, I wouldn't be as healthy as I am. I know that because eventually we want to fit in.
Yeah.
That's human behavior, human psychology. So if you want to be fit, if you want to be wealthy, if you want to have incredible relationships, build your network around that.
Yep.
And then you can learn how fit, wealthy, whatever it is that you're looking for, how they think, act, and behave. And then you start modeling their behaviors until it becomes a habit.
Yeah. And I suppose for me, I'm assuming that one of your core values in your life is fitness and health. Would that be right? Health.
I put fitness in there.
So that's not on my core values, which is interesting because that sort of shows the difference between, what my lifestyle is like in terms of like, I'm scared to go to the gym.
Yeah.
I'm scared to get out there and run. It was just one of those things. It's like, I've got to feel more comfortable with it, and I probably have to shift that into my core values to be able to go. All right, if I'm gonna.
So what are core values? Just for everyone listening.
They're different. You got to split them up. You got goals in life, and you got core values. If you have a goal of like wanting to run a marathon, if that fails, right? If it gets cancelled or if you get injured or something like that, if you have some sort of setback, you've always got to make sure that you have some sort of core values to fall back on, because if you do that, you're going to feel shit about yourself by losing your goal. So what I'm trying to say is that your core values is something that is ingrained in you, that when you fail or succeed in a goal, it's going to reflect back on those core values somehow. So is that it?
Yeah.
You might be able to explain it a little bit better than me, but
I think you did a great job. But I think it's what we value, right? I feel we all have things in our life that we value.
Yeah.
And people that we value, and that's generally when your values are aligned. And to get clear on it, it's like grab a pen and paper now and write down everything that you value. Everything. Just go to town. And then you can start grouping them together. Like I said, like health for me is what I have it as, but like fitness, nutrition, sleep, all of that is a part of that pillar.
Yep.
But mine's adventures in there. Growth, because I love growing. Like I have all these things, so I know that if I'm starting to feel probably how I felt last recording, that something's missing. And for me, more often than not, it's always adventure. But all of them they flow together, and health is the number one. Because if I'm not healthy, mentally, physically, emotionally, financially, all of them, how do I expect to do the others? Because I'm carrying a level of subconscious stress through my relationships, through my adventures. Imagine, I remember when I took holidays, I'll probably experience this again now I bought a house, but I took holidays and money was always in the back of my mind, like, am I going to be able to afford to do the things that I want on a holiday? Whereas for a long period, I haven't had that stress of actually being able to enjoy those things.
Yeah. So
when we look at, what you value, you then ask yourself, is a goal that you're working towards, as you said, Ben, health isn't in your values.
No.
Like a priority in your values.
Not a priority. It was, so I chose from like 20, like I had like 20, 30, maybe 40 of values, and I've brought that down to 5 core values.
And it wasn't your top 5?
It wasn't in my top 5.
So, and this is where, as individuals, if you have that level of self-awareness, or if you've done the values exercise, there's probably a clear correlation with the fact that you're not healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So we then have the option to go, okay, well, we can understand why it's important for you to be healthy if it's something that you want, and obviously don't just go, I want to be jacked in my Instagram photos, but why is it really important for you?
Yeah.
And like I always, for me, like as much as I love posting Instagram videos of lifting heavy weights and doing CrossFit and running and all that sort of stuff, that's not the main motivator for health. I've just seen so many people who are like 50, and I'm really motivated not to end up how they are, because I want to be that 80-year-old dude who can still play with his kids and his grandkids, and I still want to be able to spend, we're all working towards retirement, and most people's bodies are wrecked.
Yeah.
Right? And their minds, all their relationships. Something's fucked. From the point of where most people are at now, they're like, this is what I'm working towards, this is what I'm sacrificing. I'm like, I want to do that now, but I also want to know that I'm in good stead. So I know that if I continue to make unhealthy habits now, like if I was still doing drugs or drinking a heap of alcohol or eating poor foods, my body's going to pay the price over time.
Correct.
Absolutely. You may not notice it today. You may not notice it in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, but you'll notice it eventually.
Yeah, and that's you can flip that as well. If you are unhealthy and you start taking action and having exercise, it won't happen overnight, but you'll slowly feel the results of going for a run or going to the gym.
For anyone who hasn't read James Clear's book, Atomic Habits, he talks about, if a plane takes off, and his example was if a plane were to take off in LA, and it would be 2 degrees or 1.7 degrees, something like that, don't quite need this paraphrasing, but a slightest bit off, over the distance of how long it takes to get across America to New York, he would end up in Washington.
Yeah.
Like it ends up being quite a significant difference. So you think about this, right? If you're having 1 beer a day over the course of the next 20 years, your health is probably not going to be as good as someone who has 1 beer a week. Just math.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was going to say then. But it's the same with having these healthy habits, guys. The reason why, for how I live my life, my non-negotiables is my routine. And people go, once again, this is not like I've said this, but now I'm on James Clear's book, we'll talk about it. But as people think they're going to lose spontaneity and all of this freedom in their life by having more structure and routine, but it actually provides you that because you get the outcomes.
Yep.
A lot of people who are transient and fluent and spontaneous lack results. Like you may get those quick, short, moments where you gain something, but then long term, we're still craving something.
Yeah.
So when you think about that, and once again, everyone has their own idea for how they want their life to turn out. And if you don't, probably start spending time getting clear on that. That's probably what leads you to finding your passion and your purpose is, if you don't know, try things. Don't just wait for it to rock up on your doorstep because it ain't gonna fucking happen.
I've got a question for you, basing back on to the core values.
Yep. Did I go on a mega tangent?
No, that was good. I felt good from that. I was like, yeah, it's pumping me up. Hopefully I did the same for everyone listening. Yeah. But the question I have for you, based on the core values that we're talking about, I would actually love to know if, I guess, finance or money is on your list.
Wealth,
okay. Yep. What's the difference between wealth and...
Well, because I jam those in, but wealth, the 8 areas of all men must master is how I live my life. I don't just have it there because it puts things into categories. I like health, financial, all these sorts of things, but wealth to me is like abundance. Like I want to have incredible relationships. I want to have incredible health.
So glad you're saying this. Yeah, keep going.
Well,
I've got something on the back of this, but keep going.
I want to be able to have a wealth of knowledge. Like I want to be able to have the wealth of just everything. So when I think of wealth, I want a lot of money. I want the freedom of choice that provides, but I know all of that is going to come through the actions that I take now. How I've got to exactly where I am right now is because every single day for the last 7 years, and actually I'm not going to say every single day because I'm not perfect, but I have stepped up, but I have exercised, I have prioritized my health and well-being, I have been honest, I have meditated a fair bit, I read or grow, and I've worked at my relationships.
And that all falls into the wealth category.
Exactly, because that's how I find, wealth is rich. Like I have rich relationships, I have great healthy bank account, I have great health Touch
Yeah.
wood. But it's because wealth for me is such a priority, and I know that I'm in control of that.
I love that. So I was listening to something today, and they were
I feel
talking.
like I'm being interviewed.
Well, now we're turning into that. But no, I was listening to something today, and it was talking about how okay, when you die, we're all going to die, right? We're not.
100%. Mortality. Let's
Mortality.
talk about. This was not even on our show notes, but mortality.
Yes.
You carry on.
Well, I was going to say, we're all going to die, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, what I would like to know is that, like, at our funerals, what are they going to say about us at the end of the day? Like, are they going to say, "Oh, Ben or Lockie, what a shit bloke"? They're not going to say, "Oh, Lockie, great guy. He had a huge bank account. He had a lot of money. That's what I remember about him." They're not going to say that. They're going to talk about your relationships with people, what you did for people, how you made people feel. That's what they're going to talk about. They're not going to talk about your bank account.
Yeah.
So for me, money isn't a big thing, but all those other things you said were. So those relationships, the other parts of the wealth that you were talking about, so important. So yeah,
Can I share why I think money is important?
it helps those other things.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Of course, because once again, like we touched on before, with the subconscious stress of enjoying a holiday or enjoying a meal out, or just having a day off to spend with your family or friends, is subconsciously I remember how anxious that made me, because I was like, well, I'm not earning money today, I'm going to get another bill, and I was living paycheck to paycheck.
yeah.
So I challenge anyone who says money isn't important.
I think it's a tool.
It's a tool.
It's a tool that helps you relieve stress,
Of course.
and then take better actions in other areas of your life.
But it's
for sure.
such a focal point for so many people, right? It is such a focal point. Whether you can buy nice things, you can, whatever. Materialism drives most people.
Yeah.
Therefore, money is a focal point. So why aren't people becoming wealthy in their knowledge around money and how to? And I'm not saying you need to go out and earn millions, but maybe even learn to budget,
Just live a
taxes,
comfortable life.
live
Yeah.
a comfortable life. But people put their head in the sand because it's so scary.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be.
Yeah, talk to me 5 years ago. That was me. I was, I live a comfortable life now where I can sort of go on holidays and do fun things. But I don't really worry too much about where that money's going. But at the same time, you got to think, okay, well, he's worked hard to get to that point and saved and changed the way of spending.
Yeah.
And so it was.
Yeah, and imagine, right, like how you make people feel. I love buying people coffee or breakfast or whenever I go for a meeting. Like I love being able to do that and not stress about it. Whereas I still used to do it, but I would always be like, fuck, that's going to bite me in the ass soon. Like,
If you keep doing that.
Yeah, if I kept doing it.
If you kept going on a holiday every week, it's not going to... But also, if you kept going on a holiday every week, it's not going to mean the same thing as if you went on a holiday once a year or,
Actually, yeah, as well. I think it's important to, once again, we were saying, like, people are waiting to retirement to do those things.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Tim Ferriss talks about mini retirements, like where you might have a month off or a 3 month, but why, like my Fridays now are off. Literally, I work 4 days a week. So Friday, Saturday, Sunday is my opportunity to do what I want. I do choose to do podcast recordings or content because I love that. Like that's not considered work, but at the same time, I have nothing in my calendar apart from our Strong Man of Value call at 6. But aside from that, I'm like, well, I can go for a surf if I choose. I can go play golf. I can do whatever I want. Right? The choice, and I've chosen to do that because what I've found for my lifestyle is two days is not enough. By the time I recover and get in the chilled out zone, it's Sunday. And Sunday afternoon, I'm getting ready for the week again.
Yeah.
So I like having that extra day. And that's what I've chosen to do. And I think a lot of, and once again, having learnt about money, having learnt about how to build a business that serves what I'm passionate about, but also allows me to live the lifestyle that I want, has paid off. But where I'm going with that is there are a lot of people who like the idea of it and want that, but they just have so many negative thoughts, or their self-belief isn't there.
Yeah.
You knew exactly what I was like.
Oh, 7 years ago, Lockie was, yeah.
I was a piece of shit.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say you're a piece of shit. We did talk about on the Deleted podcast how we met and everything like that. But like you're a very different Lockie back then to what you are now. But that's come from growth and putting in the hard work to actually get to where you are today. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I'm a little proud friend over here next to you, just thinking about how far you've come. So.
Yeah, and so and that's the reason, once again, why the Man That Can project is to show you blokes that whatever you feel like you can't do, you really can. It's I'm not saying it's easy,
Yeah.
Like you got to deal with all the mental stuff that goes through your head, the negative thoughts, the self-doubt, everything like that. That's normal. We all still experience, and you're always going to. But when you learn to step into the fear or put in work to learn, because everything that you have in your life right now is based off what you've learned. And some of it's positive, a lot of it's negative for a lot of us.
Yeah.
Our poor money habits, our poor dietary habits, our poor communication habits. We've learned. You didn't pop out with all of that information. You fucking learnt it.
Yeah.
In product of your environment, what you learn at school. And a lot of people finish school and don't continue to learn. So this is where it comes back down to those small, consistent daily habits is how do I want to talk to myself? Present, and I still, listening to that podcast yesterday, I was like, you're such a crumb, Lockie. Like you should know, I was going to say something else, but I used crumb. You should know better. Like you should be reading your notes that you have, which tells you how intentional you want to be for your podcast. Like I've got all these little hacks or prompts in my life to remind me of how I want to treat myself, how I want to show up, but I let my guard down because I was doing a podcast with a mate.
Yeah.
I was like, I can take it easy.
Do you know what's interesting? I would love for all those people that didn't hear the podcast just to now have like this bonus episode of so they can refer to go like because you are so different today than what you were like a week and a half ago when we did this.
Yeah.
It's such a refreshing change.
Which do you prefer? Tired, angry,
no, I mean, this is what I love about you is that you do have this energetic feel about you. When I first met you, I'll tell that story real quickly. But when I first met you, it was at your fiance's concert. It was down in Melbourne,
yep.
And I had met them. I was like, I think I met them a week before. Anyway,
and you got an invite.
I got an invite. Yeah, I was.
That's not a good first impression.
Well, I did spill my drink all over Emma.
First impressions.
Right before she had to go on stage, and she had to go on stage in bare feet because I spilled my cider all down her shoes. But you were standing side of stage with a beer in your hand.
Cider stage.
Side of stage. Oh, you love a good pun. But you were standing side of stage, and I came and sat next to you because there was no one else there, and I tried to start a conversation with you, but I was not getting anything from you. And I don't know what that lucky was because I'd never experienced it ever again. That until maybe when we did the podcast a week and a half ago. But yeah, it was just this shut off guy that didn't really know how to communicate, I suppose, with people. And I know that you've done a lot of work to step out of your comfort zone, get to know people that you wouldn't necessarily get to know. Yeah,
I definitely had a lot of internal demons back then.
Yeah.
Like every conversation I was in my head thinking about how's this person judging me or what am I doing, or even dating someone famous is like what I had such low self-worth that I was always like thinking about, and because this even happens, right? It still does, where people are like, what is he doing with her? So you have all these, and I know a lot of blokes experience it where you're just in your head battling whatever you're battling. So when you're trying to communicate with the outside world, you're trying to have a conversation, but the last thing you want to do is talk because in your head it's like a fucking war zone.
Yeah.
And some people may not be able to relate to that, but that's what it was like for me. So then when I'm trying to make a good impression, I didn't know how to communicate.
Yeah, right.
I didn't want to fuck things up, and I didn't know you from a bar of soap, and I didn't know your relationship with Amy. So you might have had a really good relationship, and I was like, well, what if I say something that he goes back and says, you have all these thoughts and things that go through your mind.
So then off the back of that, I know you've got a podcast coming up with Amy as well.
Yeah.
Did she push you or like encourage you in a way to sort of become a better self? Or
no, she's always been supportive. Like she's never once questioned anything. Like I've done some like things that people generally don't support, like network marketing, and even when I was going through that process, like a lot of people distanced themselves from me.
Yeah.
She didn't. She was always there, which is awesome. But I was the one who decided to change it. Like a guy that I respected got me into that industry, and it showed me a lot about environment and energy and self-development. But then it was me. I was the one who was getting up and working from 5 a.m. till 11 p.m. at night on myself. Like I don't think people. The only people who really know how hard I worked from 2014 to about 2018 on myself is Amy and myself, because she didn't see me. Literally, I'd get up at 4.
Wow. Yeah.
And I would be under the closet, in the studio, which was like a 1 by 1 square meter little thing. at Dobby's hangout of Star Wars or Harry Potter. But I would read, I would be making cold calls, I would be posting, I would just be learning all these things that I thought was going to make me successful. And I would reach out to people who I believed were so much more successful and I didn't have an opportunity to network with, but now are my mates.
Yeah.
Because I was just hungry to change. And while I fumbled a lot and I said things and maybe I acted in ways that are annoying to people, I understood that I had to go through that to get away from where I was. Because if I'd allowed breathing space to slip back into old habits or old ways of thinking, I might have done that. So because I was in so much action, I didn't have an opportunity to second guess the actions that I was taking, which got me to where I am now.
Yeah.
And that was literally that's 15 hours a day. I couldn't do that now, I don't think. I literally don't think I could do what I did back then. Now.
It's interesting, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it blows my mind.
But you're rewarding yourself now with the hard work that you were putting back then.
Definitely, but I also don't want to become complacent because I've still got I'm not perfect. Still got so much to learn. Still got so much that I want to achieve, and I want to continue to work hard.
Yeah. Yeah, great.
How did we get there?
I have no idea. You know what we also didn't talk about?
No, that's what we didn't talk about. That where I wanted to go back before we circle around to mortality and why that's important to think about. Episode 10 was the first time you were on the show.
Yes. And now I've been technically been on the show 3 times. I'm not sure if I would hold the record or anything.
Yeah, you actually would.
Yes.
Yeah.
By default. Yeah, episode 10 was the first
Episode 10, 2017. So
how long ago it was?
Yeah, so 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Crazy that the podcast has been around that long, and I did ask you to come on the show earlier, but you no. I had to actually just learn what I was doing. And
you're talking about like episode 1, 2, around that sort of. Yeah, I didn't want to come on then.
It's funny if you listen to episode 1, I'm talking about launching an online fitness business. Because here's the thing, guys, I never wanted to be a life coach. Believe it or not, never. And I didn't even want to get back into PT.
Knowing you for as long as I've known you, the life coach thing came out of left field. So
yeah, well, even for me.
Yeah.
Because I thought coaches and personal trainers were people who couldn't get real jobs. Funny, hey?
Yeah.
But that's where in the lead up, I could have started PT much earlier than I did, but I was like, nah, I'm going to keep going and doing what I do. And I was Uber driving, I was doing sales, marketing, all this, which have all taught me great skills. But once again, I had to change my perception around what was successful and what was valuable.
Yeah.
And now I know I have more of an impact that I'm passionate about doing what I do now than once again, I was focused on money back then.
Yeah.
Because I was so broke, all I wanted was just a breather.
Yeah.
And financially, that's what I thought I needed to do.
So you waited till episode 10 to have me on, just to
make sure I
weed out all the bugs and.
But we listened back to it prior.
Oh. Yeah, I listened to it about 2 weeks ago. Before that, the infamous deleted podcast.
Let's stop talking about it. It's in the past. Never happened.
So yeah, I listened to it in the car on the way home, and I was like, wow. Like, first of all, I didn't recognize myself, and second of all, it was a tough subject for me because it was going back to a really dark time in my life that was it was just not fun and not pretty. So yeah, having to listen back to that and how I was sort of feeling at the time, and then how
I feel like everyone. If you haven't listened to it, go back to episode 10, and you'll probably actually realize how much we've both grown in terms of how we communicate, questions we ask, our relationship. It's gotten thick as thieves. But Ben back then was suicidal.
Yeah, to be fair, I was suicidal before the podcast, and I came onto the podcast talking about my experiences of being suicidal and what I went through, and the thought process of actually going through that whole thing and actually trying to get to the point of actually taking my life. But then when I came onto the podcast, I thought I was good and I'd done all the work to sort of be better and healthier, but I wasn't. I actually went further downhill after that podcast, and it took me a long time to sort of turn back from that moment. So I know that it's always a road. It's a bit of a journey to go through depression and mental health. But for me, it was just looking back and listening to that podcast, it was just like, wow. I can talk about what I talked about in that podcast really quickly, which was the information that saved my life. And it was that when I actually decided to just do it, I didn't want to stuff it up. Like I wanted to be successful in taking my own life. So I was jumping online and researching how to take pills and what types of pills to take and how many to take. Because I didn't want to come out the other end of it and, I guess be brain dead or
Yep.
whatever. So I was doing research, which is the most crazy thing.
Probably more common than you realise.
Probably, yeah. I don't know. Like, and I can only talk about my own journey, and again, I should really emphasize that I'm not an expert in this field as well.
This is life experience, but I think it's so important to talk about. And once again, if it is triggering, it's 13, 11, 14.
It is Lifeline, yes.
Or Beyond Blue actually has a mental health app.
Yeah.
So jump onto Beyond Blue, and or you get yourself a mental health.
And even if it's just like,
maybe just reach out to a mate.
yeah, do that first if you can, and talk to them. I think that was for me. I was holding a lot of feelings inside. In fact, the first time I talked about it was probably with you on that podcast. I hadn't really spoken about it.
It would have been 4 days before in the
pool. But yeah, no. So what I was doing was I was researching how to take my own life, and one of the things when you do that, you jump on Google. First thing that comes up is that Lifeline number. But if you can get past that and go into the deep dark web of suicide, first of all, you get through all these people that are really horrible and mean, which are they're telling you do it.
Yeah.
Just absolute trolls.
Yeah.
But I found this one gold nugget at the time, and you gotta remember I was in a really dark state, and that piece of gold nugget was someone saying, look, I know you're going through a really hard time, you feel like you're alone, and the feelings that you're feeling are just horrible, but if I can ask you to do anything, it would be to just wait 10 minutes. And I don't know how that information stuck with me and how I wasn't able to just skip past it and continue looking for a way to do it, but I sat there in my bed crying, and that 10 minutes I did, and then that 10 minutes turned to 20 minutes and 30 minutes and so on. And I ended up passing out because I was exhausted from the emotional effects of it all. But when I woke up, I think that's all I needed. I just needed at the time, in that moment, I needed a break from my thoughts. And by passing out, I guess that sort of did that to an extent. When I woke up, was I healthy? Was I, in a good state to continue my life? No, but it gave me that time to be able to refeed.
What did you do next?
In terms of
changing? Yeah, for that, because I think it's so important to share stories around this because it's more common than we realise. And obviously when you're in the pit of it, and as you said, your head's it's tiring.
Yeah.
And being able to talk about it, and because people can go, fuck, that's how I feel. And I think the fact that you're still sitting here, I'm still sitting here, and my life's changed dramatically, so has yours. I truly believe that when you're going through the peaks and troughs of life, there's things that we can do to improve that. But obviously when you're in the shit, in that battlefield of negative thoughts and emotions, the last thing you want to hear is someone like you and I on this podcast saying, man, it's this simple. Because it's not. Once you, and this is why prevention is better than cure. So if you're feeling good right now, if life is tip top, still make sure you're practicing ways to have strong mental health, like you do with your physical health. What do you do? For me, it's making sure I exercise, I move, I prioritize my sleep and my nutrition. I go sit out in the sun, I have a laugh, get in nature. They're things that I really prioritize, and you've got something up here on your phone.
I do. It was just because you were asking that question about what I did next, but it was the things that led me to do it in the first place that were probably the factors.
Yeah.
Things I didn't know about suicide. I actually learned this last week when I actually had a mate take his own life a couple of weeks ago. And the things I didn't really know about suicide is that breakdowns in relationship have a huge effect on it. Insomnia, not being able to sleep, is another big factor of male suicide especially. Let me just read this.
I got a whole heap of stuff to do, bro.
Yeah, great. So those things were definitely key factors for me. I had just gone through a massive breakdown in a relationship, and I wasn't sleeping. And being able to stuck with my thoughts were one of the key factors that led me to that position. But what happened afterwards, I'll be honest with you, I actually don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know what I did to get out of that state. I used to think that, okay, instead of taking your own life and I suppose just ending it there, go on a trip and start doing some really adventurous stuff that's really risk taking, and you know, you may die that way. At least you're doing
being proactive.
Yeah, proactive about it. And even that is a morbid thought, but
that's what I was just partying, and I didn't care whether I was overdosing or not.
yeah, I suppose I didn't take it down that road of like doing drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
I took it down, which is weird because adventure and doing that side of things is on my values list. But going off and, you know, if I was to skydive or, you know, to jump off a cliff or something like that, I feel like I'm still living my life in a way, but at the same time, if I die from it, it's okay because I was in that mindset.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wish I could answer that question, and like because that first time I wasn't seeking help, I wasn't talking about it. It was the second time that I can answer that question.
Yeah.
So the second time I was at work, and I worked at a radio station down in Melbourne, and I think I was bottling up all my feelings for a long time. I wasn't talking about how I was feeling, and this moment at work, it was just this tiniest little mistake that I made. It was like a spelling mistake or something on one of the sheets that
I do those all the time.
But it was this thing that my boss was she was, you know, sort of not writing me about it, but just sort of encouraged me to do better. And this one day I got to work, and on my desk was this piece of paper, and it had a sticky note on it, and it said, we need to have a chat about this. It was a spell check thing, and I was like, oh my God. And that was actually my boiling point. I broke after that, and she got to work, and we had to have a meeting in the morning. And we go into the meeting with this big group, and as we're all standing in this meeting, I start to feel myself well up and start crying. And I said, I'm going to excuse myself. So I walked out, sat at my desk, and she came out after the meeting and said, do you want to go for a walk? And I said, yeah, I do. And then she took me outside, and she looked at me, and she's the first time anyone has asked me this question, because I probably hit it really well. She said, are you okay? And I said, no. And I just broke down, started crying. And it was that moment that it was that moment where I was finally able to get help, I think. And from that moment, she took me into my, you know, general manager's office, sat me down, and like we spoke about it. We had this counselor line that we could call for free. So I did that, and you know, I got to sit down with the free psychologist at the time and talk about things. And yeah, I think it was just being able to let that off my shoulders, which was probably the biggest thing. It was being able to, and I encourage this, I so encourage this, if anyone is going through this, pick up the phone or reach out to a mate, anyone that you can talk to, even if it's a fucking stranger, just speak the words, say how you're feeling.
Practice, like, once again, if you're feeling good now, just practice the communication, practice being able to connect with your mates honestly.
Yeah. And I do not wish that feeling upon anyone. I know how dark and deep it's like this big dark cloud that won't go away. I get it. But that 10-minute rule of like, even if it's shorter than that, just please just wait. And talk. And that's the biggest piece of advice that I can give, a non-expert can give to someone that's going through something similar.
Well, I think from my perspective, we're all experts in mental health because we all experience it. Mm-hmm. And it's unique to us as individuals. So as much as there's all this theory and statistics and everything like that on how to improve it, rationale doesn't deal well with emotion.
Yeah.
For most people. They say that like being able to manage yourself rationally or logically well enough with the emotional side is like wisdom. Is like, what's that bloody guy out of Lord of the Rings?
Oh, don't talk about that. I got no idea. You know, it's funny. I've never seen Lord of the Rings.
Samwise Gamgee, but he's a hobbit.
Sam's a hobbit. Yeah, I Gandalf the guy with
that's
the beard.
Wisdom, right?
Thou shalt not pass. That's it, right? Yeah.
But when you can, so and this is why it's really important to obviously continue to learn logical ways of thinking about things, because obviously men are more inclined to be logically or rational minded, and women are more inclined to be more emotionally minded, right? And everyone's got work to do to understand themselves emotionally, and this is why the importance of, well, actually, if you guys join the Strongman of Value program, you'll get yourself a bloody 12-week game plan, and within the 12-week game plan, there's things you check off daily to improve the emotional intelligence, to improve your self-awareness, to understand yourself more, and the greater understanding you get of both of them, the wiser you become. That's why some people are like 22 and like, that guy's like, feels like he's been around for 100 years.
Yeah.
It's like, no, he's just worked on himself. Like he understands himself mentally and emotionally, and also understands the world around him mentally.
On that men and women thing, we also have been conditioned through society that men are supposed to be tough and
100%.
strong and not show their emotions.
Definitely.
Totally disagree with that now. Like, emotions are a good thing. I think.
Why are men hurting? Like domestic violence, suicide, all of these things are at all-time highs.
Yeah.
Because men are screaming out for fucking help. It's probably not the, in my opinion, the best way to go about doing it, but that's what they've resorted to a point where they'd rather hurt people they care about or hurt themselves than actually talk or seek help, which is crazy. But some other random statistics before we talk about mortality. This is a really morbid segment, but
We
I'm gonna shift. When we talk about mortality, though, I want to really give the perspective on how it's helped me improve my life.
Yeah.
And but anyway, some things to be mindful of, gentlemen, for your own life or for mates in your life. And this is based on coronal reports of male suicides in Australia. Twice as likely to be linked to bereavement, 3.5 times more likely to be linked to relationship issues, 4 times more likely to be linked to child custody issues, 5 times more likely to be linked to pending or recent unemployment, nearly 9 times more likely to be linked to legal issues, and 12 times more likely to be linked to money issues.
Wow.
So now that you are aware of that, be mindful of how those are playing out in your life, your relationships, if you're dealing with custody issues, legal issues, or money. It's why, like I was saying before, we need to educate ourselves about it, because we can say, I don't care, but there will be something somewhere. You might even be having children, and then you realize how expensive daycare is.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you've just adopted some stress because you hadn't prepared for it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's very, very important to look at this, but also your mates. When you check in with your mates, you want to be able to build a relationship enough where they feel comfortable, or you actually establish that communication line to find out what's going on in their life, because many of us don't do that. And you speak about Are You Okay? The Are You Okay campaign is fantastic. But we need to do the work 365 days a year, not just one.
Correct, yeah.
So if we're not building the relationships where your mates feel comfortable to talk to you about it, or you haven't practiced your questioning and listening, don't expect just once a year to go, Are you okay, for them to really be honest with you.
Yep.
That's fucking cheating the system.
Yeah, and it always comes as a.
Put the work in.
It's like Valentine's Day. You can't just give.
Yeah,
be romantic on Valentine's Day, because you want to be good to be partner all year round.
All year round, 100%. But let's dive into mortality.
Yeah, go on. I'm interested.
Is there anything else we've missed that you'd really like to talk about? Like, we will talk about your rowing across the Bass Strait and
we don't have to talk about that.
actually capsizing, or
Yeah, that was just more of a. And I don't want to go off your topic.
no, mate, I've got it written down here so we can always swing back around.
So for those that don't know,
Strap in, guys.
back in the day, when I was at my younger, fitter self, I wanted to raise money for a charity, cystic fibrosis at the time, and the way that I was trying to do that was to row across the Pacific Ocean. It was just something that I saw on a documentary channel of a guy doing it. I'm like, and I said to myself,
jump on YouTube and look at crazy things to do.
Well, I was like, you can't row across an ocean. That's absolutely ridiculous. But the more research I did into it, the more interested I was in it. And so this guy had rowed from I think it was America to Australia at the time, and I was planning to do something similar. So I was going to be the youngest, first Australian, all that sort of stupid things. But ultimately, it was to raise awareness and funding for cystic fibrosis, which is something that was really close to my heart, still is. And I was rowing across Bass Strait on my sea trials, so rowing from Victoria down to Hobart, and which Bass Strait, for those who don't
pretty
know,
wild,
it is one of the worst stretches of water in the world. And the reason for that is because of the roaring 40s, which are these big currents of winds that go around the bottom of the world. And when they get to the middle of Tasmania and Victoria, the water, it's quite shallow there, and the water rushes through like a bottleneck, causing big waves. And so
is it scary?
I wasn't scared. I was more riding on the adrenaline of it, to be honest. Like, we were in 2-story high waves, and this is in the middle of the night. So there's 2 other people on the boat with me, and I just remember one of the guys in the middle of the afternoon going, "Oh, look, the waves are getting pretty high at the moment. Maybe we should sort of batten down the hatches." And to give you a picture of what my rowboat looked like, it was a big open area in the middle where you row, a cabin at the front and a cabin at the back. And the cabin at the back
it's not what you see running down the Brisbane River.
No, it's not like a kayak. It's a big 24-foot ocean.
First time I saw it, I was like, it's not what I pictured. I was
No.
expecting to see you in Lycra going down a busy river.
No, yeah, I mean, this is something that I was going to be living in for 10 months by myself, so it had to be some form of house. But yeah, so we locked ourselves inside the cabin that night, and the waves kept getting bigger and bigger. Clear night as well, we could see the moon. I remember having to go to the toilet, so to go to the toilet, go outside into a bucket or off the edge, and the howling winds that we had that night were so strong, and I was harnessed into the safety line, and just, I remember taking it all in, looking out and going, this is incredible, like the ocean's literally opening up and trying to swallow us right now, but at the same time I was like, this fucking awesome, like it's so cool. And then in the middle of the night, so I went back into the cabin, we were all laying there, and probably about 5 a.m, all of a sudden we felt like this freight train hit us from the side of the boat, and we got hit by this rogue wave, and it rolled us probably 3 or 4 times.
Oh my goodness.
And when we...
Did you go tumbling around the boat?
It was like a washing machine. You go hit the ceiling, back on the ground. It was like you rolled with it. But we had equipment in the boat with us, like bags and, cases and all sorts of stuff. And when we came...
How would you prepare for that? Like, should someone be watching at night, or do you just back it down and hope for the best?
We had what's called a drogue at the back of the boat, which is a big parachute that keeps you in line with the waves. And what we later on found out was that drogue snapped. It was like the waves were that powerful.
You should have double drogues.
we did have double. We put one out, it snapped. We put a second one out, it snapped about 4 hours later. That's how strong the currents were, just to give you some sort of idea. But yeah, so when we came off this capsize, the boats are self-righting, so they flip back on themselves.
Oh, really?
You got like ballast or weight in the bottom of the boat. So yeah, the boat came to, and I just remember looking at everything, and the boat was listing, which means it was sort of tilted onto one side, and the reason for that was all the weight of all the equipment ended up on one side of the boat and was distributing the weight. And so I said to the guys, the boat's listing, we need to grab all the gear and put it to the other side of the boat. And as I started grabbing all the gear, I had this pain shoot up my arm, and I was like, I feel like I've got a broken arm. And then I grabbed another bag and I was like, oh no. And it's on camera somewhere, I've got it on file somewhere, you hear me say, guys, I think I've broken my arm. And then you hear my skipper, who had rowed 2 oceans herself, she's like, stop everything, let's fix Ben. And in the end, we didn't want this, but it was insisted upon the water police. They decided to come and rescue us in the middle of Bass Strait. It took about 24 hours for them to come and rescue us and get us home.
Were you nervous at any point of dying?
It was only afterwards that we found out how close we were to dying.
Ties really closely to mortality, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. So it was that moment where we're like, I should say that, at the time I was feeling really excited, big adrenaline rush of being these huge waves, but afterwards of looking back on it and after being rescued and seeing how close we actually were to dying, and the reason why I say we were close is because in the middle of Bass Strait there's these big cliffs, the big islands that have nothing on, just big rocks.
Google this.
They just pop out of the middle of the ocean, and we were traveling 100 meters every 2 seconds. So
100 meters every 2.
Yeah,
that's faster than Usain Bolt.
Right. Just think about that for a second. And then what was happening was we ended up going through the middle of these 2 big giant rocks. Had we been 50 meters either side of that, we would have hit the rocks and died. So, or been out in the ocean in the middle of the night.
That is unbelievable.
So that was only found out on reflection of looking at our charts.
Wow, look at that. That's messy. By kayak. Crossing the Bass Strait by kayak. Are you crazy? How long is it supposed to take to get across there?
Bass Strait? It was going to take 2 weeks to get to from where were we? Wilson's Prom to Hobart. But yeah, and in the end, I should point back on this. So the reason why I brought up this story was because that was a goal that I had set in place. I had worked 6 years to get to that point of building a boat, doing all this campaigning, charity work, all that side of things. And all of a sudden, that dream, all that hard work just vanished. Did not exist anymore because I was injured and I couldn't row anymore. So
it's another time you've had them shattered.
Yeah, it was just this time, and that was another thing that led to my mindset a few years later.
Like a failure, or?
Well, I didn't have my core values set out in place. I didn't have anything to lean on to go, well, why was I doing this right? What was all those things? And when I started to, that answers your question from earlier on, is what did I do later on? It was work out what those things were that were important to me. Why was I doing that?
Yep.
And it was yeah, but at the time, I basically lost this dream that I've been working really hard towards, and I didn't really know what to do with myself. So I spun a globe, poked my finger down, and it landed on Vietnam, and I flew.
That's how you get that tattoo on your wrist.
The elephant.
Bloody hell. But that's honestly, as Ben keeps touching on, like the importance of core values. Like if you go through the breakthrough experience, which is on the website, it's just helping you set the foundations to building the best version of yourself.
That's
and
all
it starts with pinpointing those core values, understanding the limiting beliefs, understanding the poor habits that you have, and how you can start to rebuild that to get the results that you want from your life. We're not saying it's easy, and you do actually have to stop. You do have to reflect. You maybe will see some things in yourself that you don't like, and that can be very confrontational, which is why I think a lot of people run. But if you want to get the outcomes that you're looking for, you've got to deal with it. There's no other way. Literally, there's no fucking other way. And I really like the fact that you chose something so ridiculously crazy as that, because I'm all for. I love, we've done 12-hour fitness challenges. We've done
You ever done a 10-month one?
I've never done one, but like I love putting myself in situations that really challenge myself physically and mentally, because we're all like, just even being able to enjoy that, or not, you don't really enjoy it at the time, but have those conversations with your self where you feel like I could actually die.
Yeah.
This is not.
Do you know what one of my biggest fears is?
What?
Deep water.
And yet you chose to row
across the ocean. I think the idea of stepping out of your comfort zone that's part of my another part of my phase is doing things that scare you, that challenge you, that step out of your comfort zone, and that was one of them. And I guess I had to overcome that fear of being scared of water. It still gets me a little bit irky, but it was something that I had to challenge myself to do.
I love that, mate. Good on you. And for those who want to find out all the stuff we've talked about, head to the website in terms of programs. That was a little cheeky sell. That's an ad break, actually. We're back. Anyway, mortality.
Welcome back.
So, mortality, I've been reading so much about it. And there's no particular reason why I have. I've just found that everything that I'm really interested in the moment leads to like, how can we be better parents and how can we raise the next generation better? Which is obviously parenthood books and stuff like that, because I just want to understand where we've gone wrong. And maybe not wrong, because everyone's done the best that they can with the information that they've had in the time and generation that they're in, right? So obviously it's where I believe we're in an unfortunate time in society where we have a bit more freedom to think and there's more information available so we can question things. And obviously with social media, people are speaking up about things that aren't going well in their life. We're able to ask more questions and find better answers. And when my granddad passed away in March, like I've got all these recordings, which I keep saying this every time I talk about this on the podcast, but I recorded like so many conversations that we had together, and I'd get to ask him questions. He was 93, 94 when he passed away, but you got 94 years worth of experience, and he worked on the farm until he was 80. Anyway, so getting to ask him what things he would do differently, life advice, all that sort of stuff was so fucking cool. But it makes you also realize how quickly it goes, because I've got a photo of him, myself, and my sister when we were on a quad bike at the farm, and I would have been 2 or 3, and he looked so young. And it makes you think about how quickly life goes. Yeah. And so many, myself included, play so small in life, and we use that excuse, I'll get around to it tomorrow. And it's like, you may not get a tomorrow. Like, we honestly don't know what's going to happen. And I don't mean to talk about this in a depressing way. Use it as a motivating way.
100%. Get up and go.
This will be the last time I get to kiss my missus.
Exactly. There's no yesterday. There's no tomorrow. There's only a today. Yeah. That's what you have to live for. Yeah. So get up and
make the most of it. Like, if you want to do something, do it. Like, I can't stress it enough. And like, the last phone call we recorded, and like, you get to have all these moments that I've now got that I can listen back to, and it's fucking cool. I'm so grateful that with Dad's dad, he passed away in 2014, and our thing was I'd always take him to watch me play footy, and the day he passed away was the Thursday before we were supposed to play in the grand final. So I obviously didn't get to come to that, but one thing I regret was, even though we had those experiences together, I didn't ask him enough questions. Yeah. Like, our relationship was purely, he would come watch me. It wasn't reciprocal for me to find out about him. Yeah. So I think I was able to use, and this is why reflection is so important, guys. I was able to think about what I would have done differently had I had that time back with my grandfather now. Like, that was my pa, that was grandfather who passed away this year. So we all would have moments in our life where you can think about what you would improve upon. But I wrote a post, 18 Summers, and there's a great book out there, 18 Summers, and there's a novel, but it's actually like a life coaching book. But you think about, you've got 18 summers with your children. For those who have children, how are you going to make them count? And when you say, for example, your kid's 10, you've only got 8 more summers with them before they're an adult. I think about that with Amy. Like, a mate of mine's dad, the father-in-law, has leukemia, and he's been told he has like 3 weeks to live. And I was talking to him at an event the other day, and I was really, obviously I didn't want to overstep my boundary about asking questions, but I didn't know him that well. But I kept thinking, he was 54, I'm 30. So technically, if that were to be me, who knows? I might be earlier, I might be later. It doesn't matter. But if you knew how what your clock was before expiry, like what would you do? What would you do differently? How would you talk to people? How would you treat your partner? How would you treat your kids? How would you treat yourself? Mm-hmm. So I think about it literally every single day. I'll think about mortality.
Yeah,
it's fucking crazy, and I even have moments where I'm like, I'm fucked up because I keep thinking about death.
I just know something. I'm gonna cease to stop breathing one day. Like one day, and if I look at, I'm sitting right next to you. My mate Lockie is not gonna be here one day. Like it's gonna happen. And then that mortality is an important lesson that we can learn from. Is to be able to how to improve our lives and how to improve our relationship with other people. To be able to go out there and just live a better life.
Yeah, and just stop thinking that there'll always be tomorrow. Like if you had a list of all the things that you could do today, all of them, put them in an order of priority. What would they be, and why are you not acting on them?
Yeah.
You can use the excuse of work, this, that, and the other, which is fine. They do take up time, but you can sacrifice 30 minutes of sleep to work on something else. You can get up earlier. You can cut out Netflix to focus on these things, to create that for yourself. Because you're not going to get tomorrow back. No fucking chance.
No.
So for everyone out there, it's like, regardless of what you're working towards, you're obviously doing a great thing by staying with us on this podcast this long. That's
well done.
Investing time really well. But I just, every single day, like the reason why I work so hard, I invest so much time. I was thinking about this last night actually, when I was thinking about us Ken in that episode. And I was like, why do I actually still get up and continue to record? Like, I don't get paid for the podcast.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't actually, it doesn't faze me. It's not a goal. But I'm like, why do I keep doing that? Why do I keep doing all the social media stuff? Why do I keep reading? Why do I keep running events? Why do I keep doing all this sort of stuff? And I genuinely love the fact, and sometimes, I'll be honest, I get lost in the fact that it gives me an incredible lifestyle. There's, you get to build, I get caught up in building a business as well. That's there, and I love that, and I'm not going to deny that. But at the end of the day, it's the phone calls that I have where someone comes to me with those limiting beliefs or feeling stuck, and it's like, I know by the time you get off this phone call, you're going to have a completely different outlook. Or phone call, or whether we catch up, or whether you join our program. It's like, that's why I keep doing it. And if I don't, there's people that are, like we've spoken about, are taking their lives, or are getting caught up in domestic violence, or just going through their life not reaching their potential.
Yeah.
And that's sad.
Yeah.
To me, that upsets me. Because I have been that guy, and you have been that guy.
Yeah.
And all it took for me to change was someone actually giving a shit about me.
That's an important, those words right there, is everyone has this invisible sign in their head that says, make me feel important.
Yeah. Valued and heard.
Yeah.
Fuck, we just went deep.
I know we're probably running out of time.
I'll tell you what we're at. We're at a minute, hour.
Oh gosh.
Hour 17.
Sorry everyone. Rambling on this one.
Right this second, you have been listening to us for an hour, 17 and 17 minutes. Actually, because I haven't. Oh no, I will have thrown an intro on. So yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Long episode. Well, let me ask you this question.
You can call me Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan. I wanted to ask you this question, and because I've never really asked you this question before. Knowing everything you know, and all the people that you've spoken to, and all the wisdom that you've actually gotten, whether it be talking to your grandfather or your friends and whatnot, what is the one piece of advice you would give the world, anyone listening? And you've got people listening.
I know, that's why I'm like, how long do I ponder this question?
Do you want me to go first?
I think part of me wants to overcomplicate it, but also that part of me knows that everyone fucking overcomplicates everything.
Yeah.
My one thing that I wish I knew, or that I would tell anyone, would just be just do it. Like Nike, just literally do it. Whatever it is that you know you should be doing or want to be doing, just do it.
Yeah.
Because whether you nail it or you don't, you get the feedback. Like, have the conversation that you need to have. Go for the walk that you need to go on. Put down the shit food that you don't need to put down. Just do it. Like, you're going to constantly have self-doubt. You're going to constantly have life throwing shit at you. But the more action, it's like I said, when I was working those crazy hours on myself, like, I just didn't give myself space to think about all the failure and everything. Like, I was in so much action of growing and trying to learn and build a business and change my life that I didn't literally have a second to go, oh, this dude said this about me, or
Yeah.
I don't deserve to do this because of this. It was gone. It was redundant. So just do it. I love Nike now. Thank you, Nike.
Sponsorship check coming for you.
Yes.
No, I do like that. That's
What's it for you?
mine's different in
You can quote me if you want.
just quote
Yeah.
Lockie.
It's not
Nice
like
of that. No, mine was a bit different. Actually, I wrote it down a while ago.
He was prepared. I wasn't.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Hmm.
My advice is to see people. So what I mean by that is, think about the person. We all have our friendship groups, and there's this thing called status in the world at this day and age, and people feeling better than other people and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
But my advice to anyone is to just see people, because whether it be the waitress that's waiting on you, or the person that opens the door for you, acknowledge them and make them feel like a human being, because at the end of the day, we're all one family, and that family is that we are all humans, no matter what race, sexual orientation, whatever, we're all from the same cut. And I think it's so important that we can do that, just to I guess see people. There's a great book, actually. It's called The 5 People You Meet in Heaven, and the book is about so the 5 people you meet in heaven, you think, okay, well, it's going to be people that are close to me. But this book talks about it in a different way, which is that it's not those people, it's people that you had an impact on without actually knowing you had an impact on.
That would be really cool, because I would love to see the ripple effect and that's what a lot of people don't realize is everyday actions that you're taking, things that you say, things that you share even, may have such a profound impact on someone's life.
And you might not know it. You might have done something. You might have smiled at someone, or you said something to someone,
Cheeky.
which means absolutely nothing to you by saying it. But to that person in that time, they might have been going through some sort of struggle, and by you saying that one thing or making that one action towards them without even really thinking about it, they're now going on a whole different course of action with their life. So it might have had a more positive day. They might have, that one small butterfly effect turns into a bigger thing for their life. So it's just, again, like treating everyone really kindly, but also just seeing them and acknowledging their existence on this earth.
Beautiful. Well, I think round 2 went so much better than round 1.
I thought we weren't talking about it, but I agree. It was a good podcast. I appreciate it. I hope that everyone listening and watching online agreed and got some sort of value out of it as well.
I'm sure they did.
And just to end, mate, like, I know that we've been, friends since 2014, I think. Lot of, like I said earlier on, proud moments of how far you've come, but also gratitude for our friendship, and I get a lot out of hanging out with you. And I think it's important to tell your mates how you feel about them sometimes, even though it might sound mushy and romantic or whatever.
I love mushy.
Yeah,
I embrace the mushy.
I think it's important to tell your mates that you do care about them and you do value them, because you don't know how long you've got with them. So
exactly, all the mortality
Back
talk
on that.
and everything like that.
we covered a lot.
It's reciprocal, mate. It goes around. I get equally as much value. And I love having conversations like this.
I couldn't have done this online with you. It had to be in person, I think.
No, 100%. I appreciate you driving up the Gold Coast Highway to get here on such a beautiful day. Oh, it's a cracker. Thank you guys for tuning in. Remember, like, share, subscribe. Share this with a buddy that you know will get value from it. And if you've even got another cheeky 90 seconds up your sleeve, like you've already invested in hour 22, leave a review on Apple Podcasts.
Ooh.
Get this bad boy back up where it belongs, up the charts. You know where to go. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.